This NASCAR Playoff Revisions edition of the NASCAR Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Sign up with our promo code RACESGPN to get a 50% deposit bonus of up to $1,000. We're also brought to you by Rebet. Rebet is a new social sports book available in 45 states. Download the Rebet app and use code SGPN for a 100% deposit match up to $100. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Start crushing college football and the NFL with Rhythm. Get your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM.
Driver, start your engine!
Strap in and pull those belts up tight as the Sports Gambling Podcast Network presents the NASCAR Gambling Podcast.
I'll wreck my mom to win a championship. I'll wreck your mom to win a championship.
With all the news and the best bets for your NASCAR weekend.
It refrains me from not beating the out of you right now because you ask me stupid questions. But since I'm on probation, I suppose that's improper to say as well. If you could talk about racing things, we could talk about racing things.
Now, here are your hosts, Rod Villagomez and Cody Zeeb.
And boy, howdy, do we have plenty of racing things to talk about. It is, of course, the NASCAR Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. He's Cody Zeeb, if you've forgotten. I'm Rod Villagomez, if you've forgotten. And Cody said it before we even jumped on the air. It has been forever since I've seen your smiling face, one. And this is the longest we've ever gone without recording an episode in probably 2 years.
Yeah, it's I didn't love it, Rod. So let's not do that again. But we're back, as you can maybe tell by Rod's voice. Not exactly back to 100%, but you should have heard him about 2 days ago. Actually, you couldn't hear him. That was the problem. So push the shows back. We still got 3 shows on tap for you this week, Rod. So you're going to get plenty of us over the next few days. But glad to hear you back and at least your voice back enough that we can hear you, which is, I guess, sort of vital to a podcast. That's what they tell me anyways.
No, especially not nowadays. People just want to listen in 1.5 speed anyways. So like all they hear is this and I'm going to make it like that. So, I mean, that's fine and all well, but now it just makes it more difficult. Yeah. Like Cody said, over the weekend, over the last week, actually, I've been pretty much without a voice. And as you can tell, it's slowly limping its way back to me. I was about 60%, 40%. That's a big jump, but I was not ready to go yesterday when we initially planned on recording, but I'm up to 75%. So I feel like this is good enough for now. I mean, it's the off season, right? So you guys can give us a lot of leeway, but glad to be back. Jessica's here saying good afternoon, guys. Yes, Laura's saying howdy. And it has definitely been a long time for both of them. Yeah.
So long. Yeah. Yeah. And then Justin was checking in earlier saying afternoon, boys. We got odds for everything. Back so fast. We'll talk about his playoff thoughts in a minute, but there is a shit ton of odds out, Rod. Championship odds for 2025 are up. We're going to talk about those later this week. They've got Daytona 500 odds that have dropped now. There's also a ton of future stuff, specifically on Caesars. There's also a few things on other books, but you got some head-to-head matchups for the season. You have how many Chevys in the top 10, stuff like that. We have all sorts of stuff. So we're going to cover every single one of those throughout this offseason. So over the course of the next few weeks here, gives us plenty to talk about. There's also a shit ton of news, Rod. It's been like NASCAR. It's almost like the NFL. There really is no off season. Things just continue to churn out. We keep getting some more answers, right? A lot more questions are answered, more dominoes falling into place. So yeah, it's the off season is filling in nicely, Rod.
Yeah, and thank God for that too. When I opened up those books, I mean, could we say, Cody? Could we say they were listening to us? Is it safe to say they were listening to us, or did they do this on their own volition?
Either way, I don't really care which one it was, Rod. I'd like to take the credit, but yeah, there is just so many options out, which is really great, and it's going to give us a lot of stuff to talk about this offseason and some stuff to bet on nice and early. And I know guys like Rowdy over in the Discord are already working some of those future stuffs into some of those futures parlays, which is always fun. Race win. Race win odds are up, Rod. Oh, buddy, it just gets better every time I open the app. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Hey, and let's face it, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing for us because, like you said, that gives us plenty of stuff to talk about, which means we don't have to give you car numbers on this show anymore. But follow us on Twitter and Facebook for those because those are fantastic. I've been loving those every single day. Jessica getting her Chris Wright odds already ready. So for sure, gotta love that.
Chris, that's part of the silly season news. Chris Wright landed himself a full-time ride for next year. So I knew Jessica immediately. That was my first thought. Jessica, you were my first thought when I tagged her immediately in Bob's tweet there because I was like, oh, she's gonna be happy about that. I know she's a big Chris Wright fan.
Indeed. And listen, if you are not already following us on social media, do that. And if you've not already downloaded the SGPN app, you're missing out. Get on that too. The SGPN app gives you access to all the podcasts on the network, not just this one, and picks pages. It's all in one convenient app. Plus, like all our content, guess how much the app is? Completely free. Go download it right now. Type in SGPN into your app store and download it today. Cody, we talked about it. There's a ton of news. There's some drivers that are gaining new rides this next season, and there's a couple that are, I think, surprising, first and foremost. Second of all, I think we didn't see these coming, but we definitely knew that they're drivers that weren't going to completely miss out, and they're going to get their chance. So where do we want to start? I mean, there's so many of them right now, but where do we want to start?
Yeah, so real quick, JDK checking in the chat as well, but if you're listening live, drop your ideal playoff form because that's what we're getting to after we talk about the news here. We're going to talk about, the NASCAR playoff format. Should they change things? What do we think? What are some different ideas? So drop yours. But yeah, we will start in the RFK camp, Rod. They have decided to make an announcement, painted their parking lot.
An actual announcement? That's what I said. An actual announcement? Or
they painted the lines in their parking lot. So okay. Congratulations to RFK. No, they actually had a real announcement this time as JDK chimes in. I hear they have a new paint scheme. Yes, they actually had a real announcement that was a real announcement this time after crying wolf 1,000 times. But to really nobody's surprise, worst kept secret there was, Ryan Preece joins RF Racing. So it'll now be Brad Keselowski in the 6, Chris Buescher in the 17, and Ryan Preece will join in the 60 car. 60 is kind of one of those big Roush numbers, been around a long time, mostly in Xfinity. I don't know that they've really run the 60 car in Cup. I feel like some of their one-off cars here lately have been the 60, but in a general sense, very historic number for them as far as the Xfinity Series goes. And I was trying so I was thinking, when they announced that it was 60, I was like, well, what have been some of the other Roush numbers? 6 is kind of the number you associate, right? That's been their longtime one. Mark Martin, Brad obviously drives that. 17's been around forever. Matt Kenseth and a bunch of other drivers. Buscher's obviously in that. But then the other numbers were 99, of course, taking with Daniel Suarez. They had 97, which was available. So I was like, we could have went 97, right? 26 was the number they had for a bit. Nobody's currently driving that one either. And 16 was the other one, obviously, Greg Biffle years and whatnot. Of course, that's being used by Colleague. But 60 is the number that they went with. And then part of that news as well, Kroger leaving JTG, which is another story we'll get to in a minute. But leaving JTG and Ricky Stenhouse, again, not a surprise. We sort of all saw that coming as well. They're going to go with Preece, who drove Kroger-sponsored cars in the 37 previously when he was with JTG before moving over to Chris Buescher is the one. Sorry, there's so many dots to connect. Chris Buescher had that relationship, but they're moving over now. Ryan Preece obviously joins the team. So Kroger will sponsor across all 3 cars. So you'll see Kroger and their many partners across all 3 cars. But RFK will be a 3-car team. And then additionally, Rod, they're getting that charter in a lease agreement from Rick Ware Racing. So Rick Ware Racing is now from 2 full-time charter cars down to 1 full-time charter car for now. Still a lot of rumors as far as what's going to happen with that, but that's the RFK news of the week.
And for me, all this really does is just puts him in another Ford. And I get it. I know that the Preece is going to be one of those fringe guys that we're going to look at for top 10s on a week-to-week basis. And maybe this gives him a better opportunity to get into the top 10 because SHR was on its last leg. But I mean, again, as we saw with the end of this season, right? RFK, they weren't what they were at the beginning of the season, the end of last season. Well, hold on. The beginning of last season and whatever, you know what I'm talking about. As we closed out 2024 and began 2025, they're just not the same team. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know what this does. I don't know if this makes them a stronger team. I don't know if this makes them just another middling team, but I know that Brad Keselowski obviously is going to probably pave the way for him leaving the active driving side of this sooner rather than later. You got to think that, I know that we always say that these guys are immortal and that they'll drive forever and ever. Amen. But I mean, again, he's not getting any younger. And I think as he starts to prepare for his departure, does, this move Buescher into the 6 and Priest in the 17, and then they get.
You keep bringing up Brad retiring, Ron. I just don't think we're that close to it. I really don't think we're that close to Keselowski retiring. I think he's got plenty of years left.
Do I feel like he's older than he is? I don't know. That must be what it is.
Why? It depends how old you think he is, Ron.
I think he's 62. No, I'm just kidding. I got to feel like he's 34, 35. I mean,
he's actually 40, so he is older than you thought.
Oh, see?
But still, he's only 40. Like, I don't know. He seems like a young, spry 40 to me, Rod. So
I don't know.
I don't know. But back to the Priest thing. By the way, he did race for JTG. I was correct in that part, along with Chris Buescher. But he was in the 47 back a few years ago with them and did have some Kroger connections there. So Priest is interesting because we saw at the end of the season, right? Like he had a couple of top 10s in that lame duck Stewart-Haas car, like showed some part of like, okay, here we go, some glimpses, right? We saw Martinsville last year when he led like 135 laps or whatever it was, started the pole, but then he got the penalty, just wasn't able to recover. We've seen some glimpses. Now that was with Stewart-Haas. They were sort of falling off towards the end. And before that, it was JTG. But then we saw when he went back, that year he had where he took off from full-time Cup racing. He was in the Truck Series and won some truck races. He was also ran some Joe Gibbs Racing Xfinity cars. He did really well, like won a bunch of races, proved like kind of re-showed us his talent. And he's a legendary modified guy, like came up through that. He's been good. So this is going to be sort of the ultimate, like, do you have it or don't you have it, right? Because we know these RFK cars, well, not always good, right? But they've got their spurts of, hey, they look pretty fucking good. We've seen Buescher win, was it 3 in a row? Couple of seasons ago, stuff like that. So this will be a good test for Ryan Priest and potentially a guy early in the season that we could catch the book sleeping on if depending on how they sort of view him in this new ride, I guess.
I think that's the value right there. The early top 10 markets when nobody's really getting anything going for him. And I think JDK kind of summed this up perfectly too. The mentality at RFK is much more positive than SHR. Priest will feel like he's part of the
lowest bar you could possibly have. But.
Well, and if you think about it this way, though, you think of where all the focus was when we were talking about SHR, right? We were always talking about Briscoe, and then we were talking about Barry, the newcomer, and Priest was always sort of that guy that was, and then there's Ryan Priest, right? I mean, it's like in a league.
Yeah, but isn't he still? Oh, and then there's Ryan Priest at RFK. Well, I mean,
yeah,
it's Brad Keselowski, it's Chris Buescher. Put those in whichever order you want. And there's Ryan Priest too.
I mean, yes, but it's like in a league of their own when they were all highlighting like, here's Dottie and then there's Marlon, and then she's like way off in the back. Like, I don't feel like that's necessarily the way they're going to treat him. I think they will treat this as a 3-person team rather than a series of individuals with varying importances to the organization.
Yeah, in like to JDK's point too, like Stewart-Haas, we sort of knew at the end wasn't going well, right? Harvick was throwing shots at him, saying the owners are never around, and like all of these things. Maybe the culture wasn't great. So obviously at RFK, Keselowski has really infused that team and that company with some life and presence, right? And of course, he's obviously the owner's around because he's driving one of the fucking cars. So I think it is definitely going to be a different situation there and gives him a much better chance.
Yeah, and we'll definitely see that play out. I mean, that's all we can do at this point. And I'm sure that they're hoping for the best. We're hoping for the best. And I think, like you said, as this pertains to the betting aspect of it. Obviously, I think what we look at early on is just these top 10 markets and how we can kind of tackle those. So that's Ryan Preece in a nutshell, ladies and gentlemen. So we'll talk more news in just a second, but I would like to take this opportunity to tell you about mybookie.ag. We're brought to you by mybookie.ag. SGPN started out with MyBookie, and guess what? We're back. Check out the new and improved website, which is great on mobile. Plus, they got props for every game and live dealer casinos even. Gotta love that. When you can't get to Vegas, but you still want to play, mybookie.ag is the place to do it. Even new early cash out options. Looking around at some of these lines for the games on Thursday. Well, the game on Thursday, Steelers and Browns. You can grab yourself right now a fun Steelers minus 3.5 at minus 115, which is not bad at all, to tell you the truth, because I'm sure there's other books out there that are trying to gouge you for this. So grab the Pittsburgh Steelers right now, minus 3.5 at minus 115 over the hapless Cleveland Browns, and make yourself a very nice little profit on mybookie.ag. Head to mybookie.ag, promo code SGPN. You're going to get a 100% deposit match up to $1,000 plus a $10 casino chip. That's mybookie.ag, promo code SGPN. We're brought to you by Rebet. Rebet is a brand new social sports book available in 45 states. And yes, California, it's available to us as well. Huge market of betting opportunities are available in Rebet. It's easy to use and great for people in states where traditional sports books may be restricted. Download Rebet in the App Store and use the promo code SGPN for a 100% deposit match up to $100. That's Reboot, promo code SGPN.
All right, Rod. There's one other big driver change. I think we can get into that and then save the rest of the news. We got time to talk about the news throughout the offseason. So the one other big one, also to everyone's shock and surprise, nobody saw this coming. Riley Herbst going to the third car over at 2311, another team that's expanding to 3 cars. Again, not really a surprise here. Riley Herbst is kind of the guy that everybody had tapped to go in here. Why, Rod? Because, well, he brings Monster with him, right? Monster Energy. They've obviously already got a partnership with Kurt Busch, with Tyler Reddick. Wow, how did I forget about Tyler?
It's been a long off season, Cody. I forgive you.
It makes me sad to talk about Tyler Reddick right now, but that's okay, Rod. But yeah, they've obviously got the partnership there. This will help the team afford buying that charter. If they get a charter, right? That's a whole nother deal. In theory, this is one of the SHR charters that's going to be bought. I think that the way this is all going to end up planning out is that deal is just going to kind of sit on the back burner once the lawsuit gets figured out and settled, which it's going to, one way or the other. Either NASCAR is going to win, 2311 is going to win. They're going to find middle ground. Whatever the case is, once it's resolved, boom, we'll click all the charters through. Everything's going to be fine. And this will be the third 2311 charter that's going to come via SHR. So Riley Herbst gets that nod. You know, a lot of people knocking on him, saying, oh, there's maybe some other drivers who could potentially deserve this more. I would say Riley, is he maybe the top candidate for the car? Probably not. We're a couple years removed from a few years ago, Rod, if you're newer to the show. I especially used to just fucking hate on Riley Herbst. I thought the guy was no good. He wasn't talented. I didn't understand why Monster stuck with him. Now, clearly, I've been proven wrong, right? Because I think we've seen the talent of Herbst, and maybe he's just a late bloomer, right? It took him a little while. He sort of figured it out, and now he's coming into his own. And we've really seen it over the last 2 seasons with him in the Xfinity Series. So I don't mind seeing him get a shot here being in this team. Obviously, we know sponsorship means a lot. Money means a lot. He's got both of those things. Helps him get into this ride. I did find it interesting. It's going to be the 35 car, Rod, which is sort of interesting. You know, obviously 23, Jordan number, 45, Jordan number. What number I don't remember what number he wore in the Olympics. Was it 9, 10?
Was 35 his baseball number?
So it was one of his baseball. It was like he wore 45, but he also wore 35. So I believe that's part of the reason. Also, you know, if you take 23, the second number is 3, you take 45, the second number is 5. Like that could be the other thing. Yeah, our guy Caesar's over in the Discord had shared a photo of Michael playing baseball in the 35 jersey. So obviously one of the numbers he wore at some point. So kind of continuing along that line. Been a while since we've seen, gosh, I can't think of a 35 car we've had in the sport in a long time. I always think back to like the Tabasco car back in the Bodine days. That's a long time ago, though. So 35 is what it's going to be for Riley Herbst. It'll be interesting to see. I don't know that I have high expectations for him. Obviously, that 2311 team is pretty good. We've seen Reddick way outperform Wallace. Is Herbst up to the level of Wallace? Probably not. So you might have sort of 3 different tiers over there, at least for this season, until Herbst kind of gets his feet wet. Multi-year deal as well for Herbst, so at least 2 seasons on the deal. Of course, we know that the deals can come and go and be bought out, of course, but you would think he's going to get multiple years in this 35 car.
And look, he's either going to do one or two things. He's going to come in and he's going to do well enough to keep that ride, or he's going to come in and just prove that he's probably an Xfinity driver and has reached his ceiling there and go back down. At which point, neither one of those would actually surprise me, to be honest with you, because I know the potential is there for Riley Herbst to be a pretty solid top 20 driver on a week-to-week basis. And honestly, if you look at what Chastain and Suarez have kind of diminished into toward the tail end of this last season. I mean, Chastain pulled a nice little turnaround and got himself back up into the top 10. But I mean, for most of the season, Daniel Suarez was 20 and below. Chastain cracked the top 10 every once in a while, but it wasn't with the consistency that we were used to seeing the season before. So, I mean, this isn't going to be a bad thing for either party involved.
He's on a 2311, Rod. That's Trackhouse.
Oh shit. I'm thinking of Shane Van Gisbergen.
We're not onto the SVG stuff yet.
See, this is what happens when I'm like under the weather. But again, so even 2311, like I know that he's going to be able to drive that equipment well, but like how well,
Yeah, I mean, he's probably you kind of hope he gets some top 10s type of guy would be my guess.
Cody needs to stop me from podcasting while I'm trying to recover from stuff. Like literally, I'm sitting there thinking for whatever reason. Anytime you say 2311, my mind instantly goes to Trackhouse for whatever reason because they Gisbergen thing.
Yeah, but they both kind of came in at the same time as far as being teams. Like, there's a lot of comparisons that can be drawn, right? Young driver or former driver in Denny Hamlin and Justin Marks, like spearheading it, along with massively rich celebrity, right? Michael Jordan and Pitbull. Like, there is a lot of comparisons you can kind of draw between the two teams. So I could see the mistake, Rob.
Can't wait for the trolls to get ahead of that clip, though. Rod doesn't even know the difference between 2311 and Trackhouse Racing. Should never be in NASCAR. Jessica says, have a drink. I could just blame it on that. Jessica, how do you know I haven't already had?
Yeah, you don't know what's in that water bottle, Jessica.
This is strictly not water. This is clear liquid that's helping me.
In that vodka bottle, I mean water bottle.
Man.
All right, Rod. Should we get into some playoff talk?
Yeah, let's get into the playoffs, but let's take care of some housekeeping first before we do that. That way we can go commercial free for the rest of this, shall we?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. Let me tell you first about Underdog. We've had so much fun with Underdog over the course of the season. They have been so great to us in the NASCAR community and the Formula One community, and they're continuing to go on with the NFL and MLB and NBA and esports, even the Overwatch Championship Series happening soon. So make sure you are locked in for that with your esports picks. Do you like Crazy Raccoon? Do you like Team Falcons? Who knows? Maybe you like Twisted Minds. Go find all your esports fun over there. Underdog Pick'em has one of the biggest menus for all of sports: NFL, college football, college basketball, MMA, NBA, NASCAR, and more. You can also use specials and boosts on all your flex entries. Going to use mine, like I said, on that Overwatch tournament coming up this weekend. So make sure you go and set your picks in for that as well. So sign up with our promo code RACESGPN to claim your special pick and first time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code RACESGPN. SGPN's proud partner, Rhythm, is the #1 AI-powered sports betting platform that helps provide bettors of all levels the ability to build custom predictive betting models in seconds and get predictions for betting on money lines, spreads, totals, and props. Build your own model, copy one of the top-performing models from the leaderboard, or have Rhythm build a model for you. You can now track props in the Rhythm app. NFL picks, NFL props, college football, college basketball, NBA, and NBA. Rhythm has it all. Had to build that model for Christian McCaffrey because I just wanted to know how effective he was going to be on the total rushing and receiving yards. And guess what? It came out on the over. My model did. And all Christian McCaffrey did was gain yards last weekend. Unfortunately, the game didn't end the way I wanted it to, but at least that prop did. So thank you, Rhythm, for the help in that. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM.
That's why you got to be careful with whatever's in that bottle, Rod. That Super Bowl hangover hits hard.
I cannot stand any bit of that at all. I will say to you, though, that, those of you who are trolls out there, yeah, I do know what Crazy Raccoon, Team Falcons, and Twisted Mind are, but I don't know what 2311 and Trackhouse is. So you can use that for bait if you want.
It happens, Rod. All right. Playoffs? Should we talk about the playoffs, Rod? So obviously it's sort of been the conversation around NASCAR these last couple of weeks. You get a guy that was 17th in average finish, something like that, goes on and wins the title in Joey Logano. And so everybody's up in arms, and it's all about, we got to change the system. The system's broken. We can't have this. How could this? This isn't my champion, all this stuff. So, kind of off the top of the head, Rod, like this happens every year, right? We always get a guy that's a long shot that wait, that's not the case, right? This is the sort of the first time we've ever really had the long shot Cinderella, if you want to call it that. Like, the guy's already a 2-time champion before this. So is it even that? I don't know. But people weren't upset last year when Ryan Blaney won, and they weren't really upset when Joey won 2 years ago, and they weren't really upset when Kyle Larson or Chase Elliott won the previous years. And it's been the same format. And there's been some things over the years, right, that people didn't necessarily love about it. We've seen it change multiple times. You go from Winston Cup era of just season-long points. Some people still want that. I will remind you, the champion was a lot of times decided 3-4 races ahead of time, much like we see in F1 these days. The excitement level's not really there for the last couple of races. You don't get the drama, right? But some people like the old school way, and that's how like the local tracks and the short tracks still do it. So there's something to be said for that, right? But also, that's to the point of what are you rewarding? Because in 2003, Ryan Newman wins 8-9 races, doesn't win the championship because Matt Kenseth only won 1 race, but he just outpointed everyone, right? And it turns into a points racing game, and people aren't really going for wins as hard as they normally are. It sort of changes how you race. So we didn't like that. That's why we invented the chase system. Then, of course, the chase has evolved into the playoffs, and now we sit where we sit, Rod. So I guess what are your thoughts on, do you like the current system? Are you okay with it? Do you have, what do you think we should change, or what potential changes would you like to consider, I suppose?
So if you look at it this way, right, 56 years of just the points system where the guy with the highest points at the end of the season, or if you're mathematically eliminated, wins, like it's 56 years of that. And then you think to yourself, well, this is boring. I don't want to do this anymore. People are starting to flock to all kinds of things, and eyes are going away from NASCAR. We need to shift this whole thing. Let's make a playoff system, right? Let's make this like every other sport out there. Let's turn this into a playoff system. And so you do that, and then people don't like it again because they're like, we don't like the way this week people get into the playoffs. And so you're like, all right, fine. We don't like the Matt Kenseth one and he didn't have anything. Okay, well, then let's change it again where now we're going to have 10 drivers. Oh, now we're going to have 12 drivers. Oh, now we're going to have 16 drivers. What the hell do you want? Because you're complaining about this now. So here's what I say.
And that just real quick, too, on your point there's complaints for every single one of those formats. Like,
everyone.
People are not going to be happy no matter what you do. But
no. And that's what I'm saying. Like you say, well, we don't put enough emphasis on wins. All right. So then you put enough emphasis on wins. Well, no, now people that win and get in, it shouldn't have to be that way. Well, you just said you wanted them to win to be in the playoffs. Like what? How? I don't understand. I don't get this. So there's a couple of things that I will say that I could think of right off the top of my head that if you really wanted to change something, here's what you do. Instead of the 1 win and get in, how about you make that 2 wins to automatically lock yourself in? Because then now you're putting more emphasis on wins, right? And you can't just luck your way into a playoff spot. So if you are a person that has won one race right? You win 2 races.
Hmm.
And that way now I know that it's not a fluke that you got in. And now if you're a one person that just wins 1 race, but you finish 25th the entire way through, looking at you.
I'm going to call it Harrison Burton like that.
I will not call it Harrison Burton. I love Harrison Burton. Want to have a beer with Harrison Burton. But now you really are placing the emphasis. So you keep everything else the same, right? Everybody else gets in on points and all that other good stuff. But you have to, if you're locked in, so maybe you have one win. Maybe you have a race win, but you are, 7th, 8th, 9th in points. You're still getting in, right? But you're not locked into the playoffs. And so now this whole win 1 and now you're locked in. Now we can stop hearing that first and foremost, because if you win 2, you're automatically locked in. And
technically, you're not locked in when you win 1 right now, Rod. But.
Well, this is true. See, this is what I'm saying. But what that does too, though, is it not only does it raise the threshold, right, for you to be able to get in, but now you can safely say, and it's harder for 16 people to win 2 races than it is for 16 people to win 1 race, right?
Very hard, yes.
Very hard. So now you're putting more emphasis on wins, and then everything else stays the same. That's one way of doing it, right? So if you really want to make this like every other sporting event out there too, the other way to do it is seed it. Like once you get into the playoffs, 1 versus 16, all you got to do is beat the 16th place driver. 2 versus 14. Like,
yeah, but do you want 1 race? Like, okay, so the wins idea. I get that. The wins idea I love. I think that's great. Like you just automatically, because it's mathematically impossible for 16 drivers to have 2 wins in 26 races, right? So 2 locks you in. Everything else is decided on points, and maybe you get more points for that 1 win, right? Maybe that can count for more on your regular season total or whatever, but 2 is what locks you in. I think that is probably the best idea I've heard out of everything I've heard. So props to you on that. The seeding and doing the 1v1 thing, like then you get Harrison Burton and Kyle Larson, or it would have been Harrison Burton and Tyler Reddick this year matched up, and Tyler Reddick has a flat tire and has a bad day, and suddenly Harrison Burton moves on and Tyler Reddick doesn't. Like that's just not, that introduces way more, because like in football that works, right? It's a full game, the team puts it together, and yes, or it's a full race, the team puts it together, but if the wide receiver drops a pass, like that doesn't just completely ruin the whole day and any chance you have it. But if the tire changer doesn't get the tire on all the way, that really does ruin the whole day and takes away any chance. So I think that, yeah, I don't like the head-to-head per round thing, but I do like 2 wins to lock you in. I think is a really, really great idea.
So what if you did double elimination?
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to figure out math and how many races we have, and
I don't have to do anything.
Boy, yeah, I know you don't, but yeah, but then what you got? Then you have to go 3 races to potentially decide somebody's eliminated. I don't know. I don't know about that. So I think, first of all, I want to say I don't really have a problem with the way it is right now, and I don't think that NASCAR is going to make any changes to it right now. So I think what we have is what we have. And I think that what we have is a fine, and yeah, TK saying certainly better than what 1 needed. And Jessica saying the drink is kicking in good, Rod. So I think the system we have now is pretty good, I would say, because it does sort of reward everything, right? You get a head start. The more wins you have, the more playoff points you've earned throughout the season, which also includes stage points, which is indicative of running good throughout the race, right? That's why they added the stage points. Like, well, don't just reward the guy who shows up at the end and wins the races. What about the guys leading laps during the race? Okay, fine. We're going to award the stage points, right? So it all sort of boils into it. And a guy like Joey Logano, he's had to start behind the 8 ball, right? I mean, they had to work a lot harder to get to the Final Four than Tyler Reddick did. Now, they both end up getting there, but they really had to work for it. And that's how playoffs are, right? The NFL, there's buys, obviously. But again, it's hard to direct comparison to football, and maybe buys are something you could talk about, right? Not Kevin Harvick's idea of sending the regular season champion to the Final Four is the dumbest thing I've ever heard from anyone, Rod. And I've heard a lot of dumb things in my life. That takes the cake. But yeah, I think that the system we have is pretty good. My biggest thing would be make the last round 3 races, right? I think 1 race, the drama's definitely there and you like it. all of that. But I think in the last round, if you can make it 3 races, and whether it's the 3 we have sort of at the end now, where it's a Homestead, Martinsville, Phoenix, like 3 different styles of tracks, right? 3 different disciplines. Like you have to put together 3. So maybe you wipe them all to 0, right? They all start at 0, 3 races, best man after 3, best driver after 3 wins it. And that's what we get. I think that would be a better way. I also think we should rotate the final race of the season. I've said that for a long time. It's Homestead 1 year, it's Phoenix another year, it's Las Vegas another year. Where else can we challenge the weather? I mean, we're going to try and race at Bowman Gray in February. So we're obviously not too worried about challenging the weather, Rod, right? So let's rotate it around like a Super Bowl or any other number of things where it's always different at the end. So it doesn't, and like obviously this is played into Penske's strength 3 years in a row, and they've taken advantage of that, and props to them for doing it, because at the end of the day, Rod, no matter what the system is, you play by the same rules everybody else does, and if you go get it done, congratulations, because you work the system better than everybody else. So, but I do think that changing it around would keep it different and keep things juiced up a little. But other than that, man, I don't really know what else should be changed as far as from my point of view.
Well, one thing's for certain, no matter what you do, people are going to complain. Like, no one's going to be happy all the way around. So it almost really doesn't matter if you keep it the same or if you tweak something, because we know that 2 years later, somebody's going to win and somebody's going, oh, they didn't deserve to win. And I want the whole thing changed. Well, okay, then you go to the think tank, sir, and you come up with an idea that's going to make everybody happy. It's just not going to happen. But I know that we asked fans for the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. I'm going to go to, before we get to the chat, Rod, I got some feedback over on the X, because I had tweeted out a couple days ago or posted out or whatever. A couple of responses we got. Auto Lotto checked in and said it's a flawed system, but don't fix it. It's perfect for gambling. I think that is definitely the case, because it does make it a lot more exciting. Obviously, you've got that bigger chance of getting somebody into the Final Four that's a longer shot, like a Joey Logano, and getting it done, and even in that race being a longer shot, getting it done like you did in both cases, Rod. So agree with Auto Lotto there. Mark in Mississippi checked in, said if you're a race team, Rod, you fix it by winning. That is probably the best answer we've gotten, right? I agree with you, Mark. Like, you play by the rules that are set out there. You go do it and you get it done. And shout out to Team Penske, because that's what they've done for 3 years in a row. And Logano doing it twice and using everything. He needed every string in the books this year, Rod, even including being eliminated and put back in because of the Bowman disqualification. But shout out to him for you fix it by winning, and he's not wrong there. Ryan over at iFantasy Race as well said, long running proponent myself of playoff points getting halved at the start of each new round. Playoff time should be time to race hard, and coasting should never be a thing. So a lot of people are saying, you give extra points for wins, give extra points for run, make it easier for these guys. Ryan thinks it's the opposite. Like, it's time to put up or shut up. You go out and fucking show up in the playoffs, or peace out, right? Like, show up and play good. So he said he would also get rid of the win and get in, make wins worth 75 points. So it's like a big points reward, right? So it's more meaningful, but won't propel guys like Harrison Burton into the playoffs. So sort of similar to your win 2 race take, right? Like, instead of, I think it's 40 points you get awarded for the win now, you get 75. So it's a bigger advantage. So if you are sort of in that top 16, it's going to help you out a lot, and still sort of make it to where it is worth a lot, right? You're going to have guys, what they don't want to get rid of, Rod, because it gave us a lot of drama this season, and we love the drama, right? And it's a sport. Yes, it's also entertainment. It's not WWE scripted entertainment, but you want it to be entertaining. And Austin Dillon wrecking 2 guys to go for a win and get into the playoffs, that's entertaining, right? Harrison Burton stealing a spot at Daytona with 2 races left in the regular season. It's pretty entertaining. Like, so you don't want to get rid of that. And I think that Ryan's idea there could definitely help with that as well.
Yeah, I do too. And I'm actually going to give you one from Adrian Leon, who at Wizards Dungeon on X, who followed up with me, said, leave the format as is, but award 2 points for a stage win. Phoenix is an awesome facility to attend. It's beautiful in person. and it needs to be televised, but the better tire and short car package will help the on-track appeal more. And so for this 2-point thing, see, what I'm hearing from people too is if you're going to emphasize winning, right? And I think that's what everybody's trying to say in this awarding more points.
Yeah, but then everybody turns around and bitches about Harrison Burton.
Yeah, I get it. I'm telling you, there's no easy fix. That's
but if you're gonna reward winning, we are rewarding winning.
Which is why I think the 2-win thing is the way to go, because if you're going to award more points for a win, then anybody can still win and do it. Now, if you're winning 2, that's the Harrison Burtons won't get in on that because they can't win 2 races. I mean, realistically speaking, they probably could, but they can't. You know what I'm saying?
There's a few play races in the regular season round.
But if you do end up winning 2 of those races, then good on you, right? That means you put together a decent season. But then there's going to be that one driver that wins 2 races and doesn't finish better than 25th the rest of the season, and then we're going to be back to the drawing board again. So, yeah, I don't know. I know Justin earlier in the chat saying win and in, make them earn making the playoffs, winning just one race or lucking into a win, and you advance. So yeah, he said get rid of
winning and you advance too. I mean, does that make winning in the playoffs less important though? Then are you taking the onus off of winning? So that makes it difficult too, because the fact that you can go be Tyler Reddick at Homestead, if he's just racing for points and wins a couple more points, but let's not fuck this up and finish 3rd and try and move on. Does he make that move he makes at Homestead? Maybe not. But if you win and you get locked in, then he does make the move and we get that end of that race. Like, that's where you want to sort of be careful in not going too crazy.
This is pretty interesting. JDK saying maybe make a cutoff point for the win and in, like the last 4 races don't count to a win and in. But
why? No. Why make the last 4 any different than the first 4 or the middle 4? The other thing, and I think it was TK that had maybe brought that up, or somebody had brought it up in the chat at one point, but there used to have the rule of you had to be in the top, was it 30 in points? Yeah, there it is. You have TK. Maybe the top, though they already had the top 30 rule. Got rid of it. Limit the playoffs to the top 20, 25 is ideal. So if they'd be willing to go back down that route, but then to me, that just makes Harrison Burton winning less exciting. And this is where I'm torn, Rod, because Harrison Burton obviously is not a playoff quality driver. The way he runs throughout the season doesn't warrant him being in the playoffs. But we have said since 2004, winning needs to mean a lot. And what more could it mean than you get into the playoffs? And yes, Harrison Burton doesn't have any shot of going anywhere once he makes it in the playoffs. Good chance whoever he bounced out probably wouldn't have gone anywhere either, although I say that, and Joey Logano won from basically the same spot. But Joey Logano, it's different. But what that means for a team like the Wood Brothers going forward with the money that they're going to get from the charter deal and stuff like that, I think, these teams, these smaller teams, the JTGs, RIP, the Wood Brothers, the Rick Wares, even, like, if they can get a spot like that and get that extra money, that we need those teams in the sport. The back markers are just as important as the big tier teams, right? In all levels of racing, from NASCAR down to the short tracks, or to the short local tracks or whatever. So I think having that reward for those teams is so priceless that I don't like taking that away from them either. And I think that's why you get rid of the rule, because I think that guys like that, if you go and win, why not? Why don't you deserve a spot, Rod?
Yeah, I mean, look, the whole thing is just one of these no one's going to solve it in a day type of thing. JD cases make 19 divisions like other leagues, and the division winners are in no matter what.
We could just be like college football and just have a poll every week and decide who the champion is at the end of it.
God, hell to the no, because then teams like Army get disrespected because they don't play Georgia.
Ryan Blaney was the BCS champion, but it went to Jeff Gordon in the AP poll. So, Jesus Christ, no, thank you.
No, listen, honestly, there's no easy fix to this. And really, if you even wanted to introduce into it the F1 scoring system, right? I mean, where only the top 10 get points at all. And then now, or top 15, I suppose, because there's more cars in NASCAR than there are. And then that's it. Like, you don't get any points if you're outside of the top 15. So too bad for you, or maybe the top 20. And then that doesn't, and then there's no win and get in, right? You just go, and it's points and it's points and it's points. And, does that even move the needle? Because it would seem like the old point system, but not really, because not everybody gets points. And honestly, if you're 25th and below,
but it's not. I mean, it's not really any different than the way we award points. Like Harrison Burton getting no points compared to 10th place getting a point or whatever, and Harrison Burton getting the 10 points he gets now compared to 10th place getting 30 points. Like, it's sort of the same difference. There's just not a number at the bottom. I don't know that really does much to change anything.
Yeah. I mean, again, until I hear another intelligent solution, we keep what we have, and we just roll with it, right? I mean, because to be honest with you, it just doesn't feel like whatever we do, and this is why it sucks to have kind of an episode like this, because at the end there's no magical solution that can make it all work, other than my 2-win idea. But
that's the one that's sticking with me. Like that, the 2-win one is really the one. So scrolling back through the comments here, JDK also said keep the same playoff system. Regular season champ gets a first round bye. Everybody else is set to 0. So the bye idea is interesting, right? Because the regular season champ gets a first round bye. Okay, but if you go back and you look at the history of this format, the regular season champ has never not made it past the first round. So we're sort of just making a rule that doesn't change anything in that scenario, right? Some people are saying you give them 2 rounds of buys. Kevin Harvick says that, I don't remember if it was the regular season champ or the most wins gets a bye all the way to the end. And he says that, Rod, because he was in that scenario multiple times and didn't get there. But so what's he just supposed to not race for 9 races? Like, you just don't show up? And see, that's what's funny, because so JDK, the way he's saying here, everybody else is set to 0 points. So he's essentially saying that your regular season doesn't mean anything. Just get to the playoffs. It doesn't matter if you're 1st or 16th. Everybody starts at 0. Boy, that's an interesting thought, because then people like Harvick are saying, well, the regular season guy should get all the way to the championship for it. But maybe you could put more of an onus on winning. Like, it's already 5 bonus points, so maybe it's 10 bonus points to win instead, so that the guy who does win is rewarded more, right, and given more of an advantage, but not a straight bye, because I don't think you should get a straight just bye. I think maybe for the first round, but again, we've never had the scenario where the guy has been eliminated in the first round. Actually, I have to go back and look. I don't think the regular season champ's been eliminated in the first 2 rounds. Potentially, maybe has, but I feel like hasn't. So I don't know. And that's the thing, is you got people on way different sides. Like JDK's case here, essentially what you did in the regular season means nothing for everybody if everybody goes back to 0 points. But then you have to reward for wins, and you have to reward for regular season performance, which is why I think the system we have isn't so bad, Rod.
I really, and I don't, because to me, this is about the most, because if you look back through the history of this, right, when you started the whole chase system, it was the points, it was the top 10 drivers, it was these guys that, these are the only 10 that could compete. And then they said, we'll do 12. And like,
man, the chase was sort of, I wouldn't mind going back to that type of format. And you can thank Jimmy Johnson for not having that, because he won too much and we needed a reason to change it, right? But with the chase, it was just, so originally in 2004, when we began, we're going to have a chase for the championship, right? The chase for the Nextel Cup, because Nextel was coming in, Winston was out, and it was the top 10 guys in points at the end of the regular season. So wins didn't matter. I mean, you got points for winning, obviously, but you just had to be the top 10 in points. So you had the 10 best guys throughout the entire season. Okay, here you go. I'm pretty sure they reset it to 0 for everybody, and it was 10 races. Go do your thing. May the best driver win, right? And that's not too bad of an idea, because I think that would, if you limit it to 10, because right now we're at 16, and it's a big number. It's almost half the field, but you still, guys like Martin Truex get left out, or Chase Elliott last year, or Chastain this year, and Kyle Busch this year. Like, those are types of guys that, you'd consider to be playoff drivers perennially in a general sense, right? But if you limit it to 10, then you're going to have some big fish that don't get in always. And I think there could be something to be said for that, and make it, you've got to perform over this entire 10 race stretch that, and in that you've got road courses and you've got super speedways. And so I wouldn't mind going back to that. I don't think that that's ever going to happen. But I don't know that system was necessarily bad, other than Jimmy Johnson knew how to take advantage of it and won a bunch in a row, right? But you got the cool stories like Tony Stewart sneaking in and then winning 5 of the last 10 races and taking home the championship. So, but you also get ties then at the end of that and have Tony Stewart and Carl Edwards and all of that. So, man, just a lot of different ways that things could kind of go with this, I guess.
So if you look, and I'll find the link again, and I think I just closed it, but it's the NFL or the NFL. I'm looking at JDK's comment talking about NFL. When you, what do you get for making it to the playoffs? Nothing.
Well, that's not true though, because in the NFL, if you make the playoffs and you're the number 1 seed, first of all, you get a bye, then you get home field advantage. So there are advantages, and again, it's hard to have a direct translation. Like, you can't be like, okay, Tyler Reddick, what track do you want to race at, right? Like, it can't work like that. So you can't exactly give them that home court advantage or home field advantage, but you do get advantages because you get the first round bye, which in football is different than, again, sure, give the first round bye in NASCAR, but it doesn't really mean anything, right? But then, you get that home field advantage that goes forward with you and means something. Again, how do you balance that out between a football game and racing points? That'd be the hard line to find, but there is still an advantage for an NFL team that has a better regular season than one that doesn't.
Well, yeah, and then,
but you also still get the New York Giants, aka Joey Logano, running the gamut and taking down the undefeated Patriots, right?
Well, yeah, and to get back to a point,
but that doesn't happen every year like it does in NASCAR. So I guess
you would say that sorry, coughing. You would say that the Patriots were perennial playoff guys all the way down the stretch in the 2000s and the Tom Brady years, and the years they missed the playoffs. That was a big deal. But you didn't see NFL. Well, maybe you did, because they kept introducing wild card spots and then they would do different things. But I mean, not because the Patriots were getting into the playoffs. They were just doing it because, well, they just like to mess with things. But I will go back and also say that when you talk about this, and I know this point has been made several times over, but NASCAR is one of the only sports out there where your non-playoff competitors have a direct impact on playoff drivers. So,
yeah, well, imagine you're in the NFL playoffs, right? And it's the
Browns.
Chiefs. Yeah, it's the Chiefs versus the pick another good AFC team, right? The Chiefs and the Steelers are playing, and suddenly somebody from the Jacksonville Jaguars is out there guarding the Chiefs wide receiver. Like, what? It's, again, hard to draw direct comparisons, but you still have that, right? All of the other teams are still out on the field, and as we've seen, Austin Dillon and Ross Chastain can affect the outcome of the game, right? So it is sort of tough to find that balance. And motorsports traditionalists are going to tell you, well, year-long points is how they always did it, and that's F1 still does it. That's how IndyCar does it. Go to your local racetrack. That's likely how they do it. Most of the touring series, there's a few that sort of have implemented the playoffs now, right? But a lot of them are season-long points. But then every other sport, except for college football, because they've been stupid for a long time, although they've even figured it out, have playoffs, right? Your little kids' football league or basketball tournament, like, it's got a playoff format, right? So I just don't get hate on playoffs in general, but
I just think if it's not their favorite driver winning year after year after year after year after year, then they hate it. So, and that's fine. I mean, again,
and I think that's the biggest thing out of this season is Joey Logano, for whatever reason, is just not that popular with fans, and he didn't have a great average finish, and we talked about him the entire season and how hard it was to predict when he'd show up, and he could just run where Harrison Burton ran, or he could win the race. Like, you could get both sides of Joey Logano. And so it's like, oh God, we have to change the system. Oh, we have to do all this. But go back and look, like Ryan Blaney was pretty deserving last season, and Joey was deserving 2 seasons ago. Nobody had a problem when he won it then. And Larson was deserving the year before that, and Elliott was deserving the year before that. And like, I don't think we've had in this playoff format we have now, like, we've not had champions that didn't really deserve to be the champion. I think they've all have earned it, and even Joey Logano this season deserved it. Now, you know, how he got there was different, but that's what makes it fun, is every once in a while the Giants upset the Patriots, and every once in a while the Nationals win after squeaking in the wild card, right? But most of the time it's the number 1 seed Dodgers that win, or it's the number 1 seed Patriots that win, or the number 1 seed Chiefs that win. Like, that's the fun of playoffs, right? I think that's, yeah. So I really, not much that I would change, just boiling down and kind of wrapping it up. The best ideas, I think, are the 2 wins to lock in. I think that's a great idea. And I would like to see one of 2 things, potentially both, 3 races to end the playoffs, right? So then maybe you have to go back and reformulate how we would get to that point, right? Maybe we cut it down to 12 to start, or maybe we, what you could do with 2 wins, because you're not, I mean, mathematically you could run into some issues, but yeah, I think 3 races for the championship round, I think would be great, and rotating the championship race, whether you have 3 races or it's just a single race. I think rotating it should be the case anyways.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great ideas out there. I know that obviously nothing's going to happen this season, but I think if the think tankers out there in NASCAR can get together,
they've left it open to Rod. They said they would look at it, and they could change it still. So maybe they'll listen to this. Shout out to Steve Phelps and the guys over at NASCAR, and maybe they'll implement, or at least our 2 wins. If we take one thing from the show, fellas, and ladies, right? It's 2 wins. Lock yourself in. I think that's the way to do it.
And I will take 0 credit for that when it actually happens. I'll just play demure and say, oh, that's such a great idea. You guys really came up with a good one, because you guys know that I don't necessarily have to thump my chest to feel good every day. Speaking of thumping my chest, I'm going to go do that and put a ton of Vicks on it in the process. Got to get ready for the F1 show later this evening. So with that, Cody, we can't solve the world's problems today.
We'll be back this evening. 7:30 Central Time, 5:30 out there on the West Coast for you. Live right here on the NASCAR Gambling Podcast YouTube channel. If you're listening to this on the podcast later, it'll be in your podcast feed as well. NASCAR's over. We still have 3 F1 races left for the season, Rod. They're going to be in Las Vegas this weekend. That's going to be really exciting race. It was last year. If you've not kept up with F1, Max Verstappen doesn't win every race anymore. It's actually a lot of parity in F1. It's great. And yeah, very, very excited to talk F1 racing this evening with you. And hey, we don't have any NASCAR to bet on, but we do have F1 to bet on. So that's going to help keep the juices flowing this weekend as we count down the days, Rod. Only 88 days left till the Daytona 500, which means less days until the Clash, which I'm very excited about.
Indeed. All right, Cody. Well, then let's send everybody off into the sunset. Jessica wishing me, I think me to feel better, and thanking you for the show, which, by the way, is exactly the way it should be. And then Laura saying adios for now. Thank you. Very welcome, Laura.
Adios.
Send everybody off into the sunset, Cody.
Yes, Rod. We'll join us later, again, live when we're back for the F1 show. In the meantime, follow me over on the X at Husker_Zeeb. Find all of my stuff there. We'll be back tomorrow as well for another NASCAR show. I don't remember what we decided to do. Championship odds, maybe? Can't remember. I think we'll be back to talk 2025 championship odds tomorrow. So either way, join us and find out what it is, because it'll be exciting. Yeah, see you later today. We'll see you tomorrow. And yeah, I don't know. That's it. I'm done. It's been a while, Rod. I don't remember how to get out of here. Where's the door at? I can't find it. I don't know what's going on. Let me out.
Follow me on Twitter, where you don't have to hear my voice, at RJ Villagomez. Link in the bio to everything I've got going on, whether it's here, whether it's Sportsbook Reveal, still throwing down first touchdowns, which, by the way, Joe Mixon, thank you very much for making me a winner on that one. And also, I'm shooting off rockets on Twitter, so follow that as well. All right, we'll see you guys tomorrow. Actually, see you guys later tonight for the F1 podcast, and see you tomorrow for more of the NASCAR Gambling Podcast. Until then, let's go racing and let it ride.
Another piece of us is broken. Eyes cry till they're